Hello, boys. We are back.
On. Finally.
Yeah, so the long-awaited, much-requested season 2 of What's Going Down is starting up now. Just a few months into the new year, but we're as ready as ever. We are looking forward to, I think, this season get some more interesting guests on. For the first episode here, we'll just have a quick discussion here, in particular around what a lot of people are talking about. Of course, being an AI company for 6 years, it's interesting to see everything that's happening around AI agents, vibe coding, and all of that. So we're just going to have a small discussion around where we see that in the field of energy management. But first of all, maybe just a little update on what's been going on our side. And I think one of the reasons why the podcasts have been delayed a little bit is that things have been a little bit crazy in Ento land. In the past 6 months, we've basically doubled the business as well. So that is, of course, a good thing, but it also means there's a lot of work, but fun things going on. Maybe first, Madeline, just if you have some insights on maybe the highlights of what's changed and what are the things that we've been working on, that would be nice.
You want me to make the excuse of why we haven't recorded any podcasts? It has been crazy. Yeah, it really has been crazy. So this doubling of our company in terms of clients and the impact that we can bring to these clients has come from, of course, our core market being in Denmark, but also some really large clients in the UK and in Italy. So if I just start outside of Denmark, I think that I don't know which of the markets that is most exciting because they are all exciting in different ways. But in the UK, we are now working with a very large supermarket chain that is just using a lot of energy and are really receiving really good results on our platform. So that, of course, adds to our growth when hundreds of supermarkets joins our platform. In Italy, it is a mix of many clients, but lately also a multinational retailer that has joined, starting out with the Italian source, but there's also hundreds. So that is a super good client there. And then in Denmark, the growth has come from commercial real estate. We have added like 8 new municipalities, I think, as well. But that is kind of growth that has kind of just existed throughout the past many years, is that we're serving a lot of the public sector in Denmark and the retailers. But the new segment that has been growing the most is within these commercial real estate companies, so investors. And they are both serviced directly, so they're using Ento themselves or through asset managers, where we have gotten a really good collaboration up and running with both Newsec and Cobblestone as being the kind of the major asset managers that we have started working with. And they're using our product on behalf of their end clients.
And maybe that's also, yeah, that's a good rundown. Maybe it's also a teaser for next week's episode, one of the ones you mentioned there.
Yeah. So next week, well, depending on when this go live and the next episode go live, but in the real world, we are inviting Anis from Cobblestone. Anis is leading their sustainability team and has been a really good client to get in on our end because he's challenging us quite a lot on the product that we deliver and the service we deliver around it. So we said, Anis, why don't you join us for a podcast? And he said yes. So next time, the next podcast will be with him, and we'll talk about how they are creating value with energy management as an asset manager. So super relevant for this growing customer segment that we have.
Yeah. And speaking of the product, I guess lots of stuff also happening there. And maybe Benedetto, you have a little bit of an overview of what's been going on.
Yeah, definitely. So I think I like this idea of the flywheel, right? So from the commercial side, the more customers we close, the more references we get, the easier it is to close the following customers. But I believe that on the product side, we are almost seeing the same, in the sense that when you start a new company or a startup, right, you begin with the product, and unless you are directly coming from a specific sector, you have almost no idea what will work and what is the actual needs of your customers, right? But then the more you start closing and working with, the more feedback you get on your product, and the more you like start following those, right? And so if you imagine like, kind of like in video games, you have a map and it's almost completely like gray or covered at the beginning. And then gradually, as you start working with more of these customers, you discover more of this map, which is like, how does the product need to look like to bring value in the real world? And I really like that these large customers that we are starting to work with now, they come with strong opinions, they come with a lot of feedback, they come with a heavy usage of the product, and that's like the best that we could ask. We would almost want to service them for free just for the feedback that they give on that.
Benedetto, you can't say that. Can't say that.
We'll erase it from the recordings.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. Yeah, like if like closing one of these and then learning from them helps me close 10 more later because they just have the same needs or very similar, then it's just so valuable to start working with more of these. And that's like a super exciting from a working person on the product to be developing close to them.
I think it has been a strategy from the get-go, is that there's no way that, when Henrik, Kasper, and I, when we started the company, there was no way that we could find out which product to serve. We had to really ask our clients, how can we develop the right solutions for you? So we have just been very centric on their needs, and these clients have some different needs. So we, from the start, built up this community where we're both, of course, having check-ins with our customers about these things, but also a meeting in person and discussing, okay, so if all of you are following the SBTI or the reporting with GRESP or whatever moves their business, how can we support that? So it's not so different, I would say, from a conceptual standpoint, but their needs are just different.
Yeah, and I think it's important from a business perspective to just this notion of compounding, right? A lot of people are talking about that in the sense of financial compounding of revenue or whatever it is. But I think it applies just as well to the number of customers you have and can learn from. You can make the product exponentially better, as you add more customers, because you get more feedback and you get deeper into what product is actually useful and delivers value. Okay, so I guess on that note, I think one of the topics that, of course, we're hearing a lot about, a lot of people are talking about in this sector is, this notion of, we have now all these vibe coding tools, we have all these AI agents. So one of the questions that I want to bring up here, could you, in principle, vibe code an energy management system? I think that's a really good question that all our customers and we should be asking, right? So how are we seeing this from the different angles?
Yeah, I think, so I would separate maybe two things. And one is like, okay, vibe coding, and the other is like AI assisted coding with tools like Cursor and Cloud Code and all this. And I think they both have like very different but relevant implications. And so to answer the first question, which is, can someone vibe code an energy management system? I think you can to some extent, but I don't think that when someone is paying for a system like Ento, is paying like for the initial development that you're doing, which, okay, you can get to from, 0 to 0.9 quite quick in a weekend or whatever. But then you're basically paying for maintenance and for having like a group of specialists, so very smart people thinking really hard about these problems every day. And so you really don't want to do that. And so like I was also like listening to some podcasts like from like people from Anthropic, for example, and they were like, okay, like we are Anthropic, but we are not coding, Slack from scratch. Like we are the top, we have access to the top models, but we still pay a service for for messaging because we don't want to invest ourselves like the time to develop something that someone else is already like doing maintenance. They've been they've been thinking about this for a very long time, and there is really no point in like losing track of the mission of your own company to do something that is on the side. And then when it comes with about like AI assisted coding, I believe it's just allowing us to service our customer so much better and so much faster, to the extent they can't even believe, right, the speed to which we develop the new stuff. Maybe Malte, you've been like working at one of these large customers lately, and you can like comment on how that's been going.
Yeah, so I think we see this in two ways, this whole cycle of development that is just being short. One example of this is when we do physical workshops with the clients, and then we have so I dedicate a full day, typically with Mass or one of the other colleagues. Maria has also done some customer workshops, full day workshops. But there we let the team know that, hey, I'm at this client today. If there are certain things, please prioritize them. So we put them in our chat, and then they just get developed. And by the end of the day, even rather complex features can be pushed or during the day. So that like intraday development has been super fun. I think and valuable for the clients, of course, because it's the things that they need. And I think the extreme of that was at some point I was in a meeting with Adelit Henrik and Roberto Chiosa, and he live coded something. He all of a sudden just went silent, and I thought he was just taking notes. But then he refreshed the page, and then the feedback from the client in this product was live. And he could, of course, only do that because he was showing it local, but still this development speed has just gone nuts. And that is basically tying into your first point, Bendeso, with saying, should the clients then do this themselves, or do you want to have an external company deliver a product that is then just exponentially developing faster and faster? And I'm in the same boat here. I don't see our energy management teams or core user doing development on software. One of the key values we bring in Ento is that they don't have to manage the metering infrastructure anymore. So pretty recent client we got, he said, well, now I can actually do energy management because we are connecting to the main meters from the utility. Before he was actually servicing the gateways that would pick up the signals from the meters. And he always had problems doing that. So he spent 80% of his time collecting metering data. And just by automating that, he was able to actually do something. It would be a step back for him if he should manage any kind of software application and run that. I think it's just not his competence. So I fully agree. We need in the future, in my opinion, at least in the immediate future, is that we're just having software services that are, the line between services and software is probably getting smaller because you create software to fit a certain need that would almost be a service before, but not in a way that you should vibe code anything from scratch. Yeah, okay.
I think it's so one of the things is just talking about when we and many others can create features faster or iterate on things much faster, it also has the danger of producing a lot of slop, right? AI slop. So just bad code.
Feature slop.
Yeah, too many features. Yeah. And bad code that'll just haunt you later, right? So I think this is one of the main differences between vibe coding something and then developing something quickly with the use of AI, but within a very structured platform, right? So that's the only reason we can do that is because everything is set up and there are the right pieces in the right places. And then on top of that, of course, you can do things quickly. And in particular, if it's creating some kind of UI or, adding a new endpoint or whatever it might be. So I think this is probably speaks to the main value of existing SaaS software and solutions in general is you have this data foundation probably, and not just the data, but also the platform foundation of how do all the pieces fit together. And on top of that, you can really create a lot of things maybe much faster, right? And so it opens up the question to how should we, as a company, also enable maybe creating more on the customer side. And I think those are some of the product discussions we're having and obviously working with as well. And there, I just think it's important that we keep in mind what is actually valuable and what is just hype, right? And so,
Where do you see that going, Henrik?
what do you mean?
Well, how are we enabling that?
Yeah, so I think an obvious learning that we're seeing is, okay, we have an API within Ento. It's never been the first class citizen. It's always that we've catered in our product more to the end user that's, clicking around. But we're seeing the API become more and more important, of course, because people want to integrate. And then, on top of an API, you can have an MCP that then agents can also use. And we're starting to get more and more requests also for just interacting with from Claude or from somewhere else with those APIs. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Like, we all know our mission is to accelerate these energy optimization processes, right? And if we can see that our customers and our partners can just have a better and faster process because they can just integrate to an infrastructure instead of necessarily clicking around everywhere, then of course it makes a lot of sense.
But also maybe to the extent to which like you decide to implement these AI chat features within the product is also like a key point that needs like a lot of reflection, because to some level it can go, like, it's like a spectrum, right? And then on the one side, I think you have like, okay, I would like to do some creative things that it's difficult to have like within a few clicks, because my use case is very complex and I want to have like, maybe I want to create some reports, and then to create these reports, I do not want something boilerplate, but I want to be able to do this like kind of iteratively and creatively with this assistant, right? But then on the other end of the spectrum, I think you have a product that is not usable enough. And so it's like, okay, potentially we could service this need of yours, which is pretty standard, just with a few clicks and a few defined workflows, which is really, they really use a lot, right, in energy work. But then some products we see going like, okay, even though you could only do that with a few clicks, we still implement the chat way in order, because our product is not usable enough. And then like people can't find out which 3 clicks they need to do. And then we are lazy and we implement a side chat so like that people will just do things like in this maybe more complex way, always asking about things, while like having something that is maybe more essential, more clear, more minimal, and avoids like the general experience of talking to a chat to do something standard, which in general I don't like when I use other products, right? I want to be able, like, if I know that I need to do something and that thing is not creative, I don't want to talk to an agent. I want to just do it. And so I think we need to think really well. And that's also, I think we've been taking this approach of the API, right? Which is like, okay, specific things that you can interact with, but not make the whole product like around chat, which is probably not the best user interface for this type of work.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. Like, our customers expect that when they want to get numbers, they get the right numbers. They expect that when they get this type of analysis, that it's done the same way as yesterday and the week before, right? So that type of thing is really important to keep remembering. You cannot just put everything into natural language and then have an agent decide how things are done. And then taking the, as you say, creative or maybe more, analyzing a situation like a human would can sometimes be done in this way. So we have our root cause analysis, which is very much built into to exactly where the customers are working on fixing an issue that is using these LLMs, right, to generate something useful, the next steps to check. And I think that's one way to think about it. Another way is if you need to generate reports that have some kind of text or description or commentary on what's going on, then that's, as you say, a creative thing that can then be added in this way. But the overall analysis should be the same next week, right? So then you need the fixed workflow. So I think really this in an enterprise setting, this balance between fixed workflow and creative or, non-deterministic agents are really the important part to get right.
Henrik, for the listeners that may not have a PhD in machine learning, the non-deterministic, can you just fold that out a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So when we say workflows where that is done the same way every time, then those are deterministic, based on some data comes in, and if the same data comes in, yeah, exactly, the same results will come out again. Within that, there could be some flexibility, of course, like a machine learning model can sometimes change the result, but you should be able to reproduce it. And then, on the other side of that is not deterministic. That is, you give something to an AI, you don't actually know what comes out on the other side, and you just have to keep improving your prompt so that it becomes closer and closer, or you should actually use it for what it's good for, which is more of the creative stuff.
Okay, so in a real life setting, and what you're saying is that, for instance, an energy engineer, you've bought a very expensive new lighting system for your logistics warehouse, and you've entered a performance contract with the supplier. So here you're doing a IPMVP, you're doing a performance-based verification of the savings, and there you want to have a result that is robust and you can basically recreate in any scenario, recreate with the variables that you've agreed upon in the contract of this MNV, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is something you always want the calculations to be this, at least the calculations should be the same. And then the results will depend on the data, right? And then maybe the analogy there, or the additional thing that you could then add with an LLM, which is also something we've been working on, or you in particular, Benedetto, is then based on those results, what are the things that we would like to highlight or comment or flag as notes? That is a perfect task for an AI to do, because it's much more like taking many different data sources, maybe looking up some building information and then giving that comment, right? And that's something that, an energy engineer would sit and do, and they probably would as well afterwards, but they just may not have to fill out 80% of the comments that can be done automatically.
So it's the interpretation part so you have the results, the statistical results that you can replicate, and then afterwards you may create a full report, which is an interpretation of that. And if you gave that to, 20 different energy engineers, you would also get 20 different results, because there's human interpretation, but there are also machine interpretation that can differ.
And that's also maybe where the experience of the user also comes in, right? So I think it's like, okay, we have these AI tools, the models are getting more and more capable, they're getting to PhD level or whatever. But I believe, like, whenever we use them, we should always make sure that we would be able to get to the same conclusion by ourselves and without using the tool. Like, it's okay if I have so many data points that it's not humanly possible to evaluate them by hand. And so I have a machine do it, and then I can interpret and validate the result. But if I start to, like, if I'm doing a completely different job, and then at some point I get to Ento and I ask Ento, like, okay, what is the top things that I should look at in the portfolio? But then I get a result that I cannot understand, and I would not have been able to get to the same conclusion by myself. I believe the result is useless, because I cannot validate it. I cannot understand if it's actually good enough or not, if I should act on it. So this maybe also goes into the direction of saying, like, will AI take all of our jobs? Like, I don't think so. Like, it's enhancing our skills, but we still need to, like, be able to do the things ourselves. And so, like, there is more and more need of experienced professionals to then use the tools.
More critical thinking, less manual work.
Yeah. Great. Well, I don't know if it's a surprise that our conclusion will be that you cannot write code in energy management. At least it'll take a long time. Like, I'm just seeing at some of the things we're working on every day on analyzing this and that data or managing the data that is coming in weird formats and changing resolutions and all those kinds of things. So there's years of work in just managing that. So that's just one practical part. And then some of the things that we've discussed here are, of course, important to consider. Anything else on that before we wrap up?
Maybe like a good analogy I was thinking of is like, okay, if the vibe coding now can help you do like 80 or 90% of an energy management system, it's still like, the last 10% is the one that requires the most effort and the only one that matters, because like getting to 80% is useless if you can't get the last 10%, which is like the most difficult part and the one that matters. And that's why like there are companies that are specialized on it and across really any domain. And I think we will see more and more of this instead of just like anyone vibe coding their own tools to do stuff.
It's the same analogy as you gave before, and that's right. You have very large, very good companies that are specialized in software development. They're not inventing all their tools themselves. They are using off-the-shelf tools. So the idea of inventing and running the infrastructure of a product, which you could pay, half a full-time employee salary or 2 full-time employee salaries for, just doesn't make sense if you need 5 people to run it or 1 even, right? So agree on those notes.
Great. Well, yeah, I think we're at the end of the discussion here, and I think we can just say we're looking forward to next week and the coming weeks. So stay tuned and see you there.